It's the action point, no relaxing. Straight from off the rails with your host, Mr. Patrick. Show we attack, then defend and react. Calculate the damage, then resolve in a snap. Facts with this here and ember blade, leave no witnesses. I just close the combat chain and we winning this. Listen, this the blaze, we ain't going scar for scar. And I'm feeling like a hero, we ain't going card for card. It's the action point, no relaxing.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Action Point. I'm your host, Patrick Shaw, and this is episode 6. Pro Tour Baltimore is come and gone, but the Flesh and Blood world is still a chatter over what a terrific experience it was. We want to give a special shout out to the very first guest of this podcast, one Mara Ferris, for making it all the way to the finals on her Drill My List. She's changed a few pieces since, but you can find the deck tech that is the core of her Empress variant strategy right here on Off the Rails TCG. We love having big names and rising stars here on the Action Point, and we've got one such star here with us today. Merrick Kemp is the winner of the largest calling of all time during that very PT Baltimore weekend, piloting Dash expertly all the way to the finish line. Merrick, thank you for agreeing to join us, and welcome to the Action Point.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
We talked a little off air, but we do have a little connection. You beat the crap out of me in Battle Hardened, New Jersey in 2022. Do on Dash then as well when you top 8'd that Battle Hardened. I was just I was on Briar, and you double throttled me when I was at 1 and couldn't stop you, and as Dash seems to do these days.
Yeah, that's a pretty classic Dash, especially in Blitz.
We'll get into some of that, the nuances of these, how Dash goes a little later. But you were just on the Savage Land news recently. So, audience, if you want a full card by card deck list breakdown, I do recommend going over to that channel and giving that a watch and a listen. I'm going to try not to rehash the same questions. So, here we go. So, Merrick, before Flesh and Blood, you mentioned that you were a Yu-Gi-Oh player. Have you always been a gamer? And what other games have you had like a chance to play in, like, perhaps either casually or in a competitive setting?
Yeah, so I've always liked gaming. I used to play like more video games, I guess, growing up in high school and middle school and stuff like that. But ended up, I guess Yu-Gi-Oh was. Well, I played board games too, like tabletop, just any normal board games with friends and stuff. Enjoyed that, but Yu-Gi-Oh was the first one that I started like any level of competitive play at all, and even then I can't really say I was a very competitive player. I was like running the jankiest thing I possibly could because I didn't have the budget as a high school student. But yeah, and then more recently, the game that I was playing more seriously was actually XWing, the minis game.
Sure. Yep.
And it was when that game kind of fizzled out that I actually discovered Flesh and Blood, and since then I usually dive headfirst into like one hobby and just like kind of tunnel vision on the one thing at a time. Sure. So I've been basically obsessed with that ever since.
Now at XWing, is that on the I go to game stores, I play card games all around me. There's a bunch of other stuff. Is that the one where it's like it's like a 4 foot by 4 foot square mat, there's like a galaxy backdrop to it, and then it seems like, I don't know, there's X-Wings, and then there's TIE fighters, and guys with rulers. Yeah,
exactly. It's excellent. Like a lot of like, it's cool because it's a lot of spatial visualization, and then the way you move your pieces, you decide where you're going to move before you or your opponent knows what the other one has chosen. So it's like kind of trying to outthink your opponent, and like, that was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that quite a bit. But yeah, definitely happy I found Flesh and Blood after that, for sure.
Yeah, no, I find, I think one of the most fascinating things that I find about every guest is like the convergence from where you came from to Flesh and Blood. And it's like that common thread. I don't want to like James White it, but the common thread of playing great games in person and in the Flesh and Blood, it really rings true here. Flesh and Blood does a great job of roping people in and getting them to stick around. What about Flesh and Blood, the game system, stood out to you for you to know that this was the one that you wanted to be a part of?
Yeah, so I think, there are a lot of things. the first deck I played was Katsu, so that whole like combat, I think Katsu is one of the best heroes at getting the combat feel of the cards, right? Like tap and head jab, like it's literally pictures of people kicking and punching, right?
Sure,
And so
yep.
it's like that kind of interaction, like the card you're playing it doesn't just feel like putting a card on the table, right? It's like you're kind of almost building a story throughout the game too. It's like, and then I did this, and then it's like you can kind of feel your opponent like blocking or dodging or whatever. I don't know. I really enjoyed that. It was, I guess, kind of in line with that. It's just a very interactive game. Like you're constantly making decisions, whether it's your turn or it's your opponent's turn. You're like, I don't know. It's just very engaging. I get bored pretty quickly, so waiting a very long time for my opponent to take a long turn is not as exciting as something like Fab, where you can, even in the longer games, you're like, you have a plan that you're trying to enact the whole time, and you're like carefully setting it up. Some heroes do that more than Dash does, but but yeah, I really enjoy that aspect.
Excellent. Telling a story as you go, that's a great way to put the game. That just stuck in there. I'm gonna keep that in the back pocket there. So on top of the Calling win, you have 2 battle-hardened top 8s. One very recently in Richmond, the other in New Jersey last year. So between New Jersey and Richmond, what exactly were you doing? What are your stats in between? Are you a grinder? What have you been doing with Flesh and Blood this whole time here?
Yeah, so I guess not a whole lot, to be honest, between those two. I wasn't able to make it for much of the RTN season last year, so I kind of missed out on that. And I was kind of like, I was playing ProQuest, but I was still newer. I actually learned the game in Blitz. My local community was playing Blitz for quite a few months before venturing into CC. So the New Jersey Battle Hardened being Blitz was a lot easier for me just because I was more familiar with it at the time.
Yep.
So since then, kind of just working on CC reps and trying to get an invite at local ProQuests and things like that. And then I missed the RTN season, like I said, but I went to the World's Calling in San Jose. I was pretty happy with that. I got top 32 there out of like over 500 people, I think, at that event. So
all right.
Kind of going into the more recent Calling, that was sort of my benchmark. I wanted to do at least as well as that, if not better. So
you have the winning the Calling may have changed your perspective a little bit, but what exactly is, what would you consider your relationship with Flesh and Blood? There's some people I look at, like Brody Spurlock is, it talks on the Pro Tour stream about how he considers it like a competitive sport, right? Just the same kind of mentality going into that. Yeah. He's deep into training. He prioritizes that over all these things. There's other people like Matt Folks picks up the cards the day before, right? and in hopes to get sleeves and tries to play into a Pro Tour. Where do you fit in between the Brody and the Folks of the world?
Yeah, definitely somewhere in between. I would not feel comfortable picking up a deck the day before and trying it at a major tournament like that. I kind of like to really get a feel for it and fine tune over time and like feel really good and just know the deck inside and out before I take it to a larger event like that. But I also definitely don't have Brody's level of success or dedication, and he goes to like basically every single event in North America.
In the world, like, it's crazy. He was in New Zealand. Like, I don't know how he does it.
It works for him, right? Like it's a really good way to get better. Actually, I kind of did notice that too, and I have to attribute like any success and growth I've had with CC to it is with all of the recent battle hardens being kind of centralized on the East Coast for the US this year. It's like I've been able to go to a lot more of them. So I went to Richmond, I went to Charlotte, and just like having more experience playing in person with high level players is just so valuable to like, because those losses stand out a lot more in your mind when you're trying to figure out like what could I do better. So I think, and it also helps you test how you're performing, how your deck is performing against a more talented field than like maybe a random queue on Talshar or something, right? So that was kind of what I was doing. I was using it as like I mean, obviously I wanted the PTI because I've been struggling to get one for quite a while. But I was also really looking at it as kind of practice to hopefully do well at the next calling that I went to. So.
All right.
Yeah.
Excellent. So, so outside the calling, how was your Baltimore weekend experience overall? Did you come for the Pro Tour, or did you come for the calling?
Just the calling, yeah. Like I said, this is actually so. my like stretch goal for the calling was to get the PTI. Like I've seriously been. We'll probably talk about that later on, but it's a pretty tough area to win a Pro Quest around here. So yeah, definitely that was kind of the goal. I just wanted to get invited to. My goal for the year actually was getting either a PTI or a Nats invite, just to be invited to some larger event to play against like the best of the best, right?
Sure.
So really excited that I have that now to go to the next, one of those events that I can make it to and get that experience. But yeah, so I just went for the calling. I'm from Charlottesville, so it was only about a 3-hour drive north to Baltimore. Yeah, so not too bad. And then split an Airbnb with a couple friends, which is a lot of fun. It's always way better going to these events with friends than by yourself.
For sure.
But yeah, so we just went for the calling. We got there Thursday night, so I did play the Commoner event on Friday, which is a lot of fun. Dash was also pretty good in Commoner. I play Dash in like everything, I guess. But
when you're a one trick, right? You gotta just do it.
Yeah. I mean, I play other heroes too, but it's like it's very hard for me to convince myself not to play Dash. Some bias there for sure. But yeah, so played the Commoner event, a lot of fun, and then just kind of like got our bearings and got some good rest before Saturday. I think that helped a lot as well.
So speaking of that, so you didn't land there by yourself. Who was on your team?
Yeah, so the local guys that basically taught me Flesh and Blood and kind of got me into it, John and Chad, we went up together and, like I said, split an Airbnb. Both very good players. John had some rough luck at the calling. Chad made day 2. I gotta credit both of them actually, because like so many of my reps were against those guys, especially the Lexi matchups. Chad is a very good Lexi player, so I think that helped a ton. And the 4 Lexis that I played on day 2, being able to beat them is pretty much just because of the practice I had there. So.
Awesome, excellent.
Yeah.
So winning the calling is one of the hardest things that I think someone can do in Flesh and Blood, in my opinion. There's the largest calling ever. There's 925 registered players before round 1, the largest of all time. What were your specific expectations going in? You had mentioned wanting to go for the PTI, but did you have something? Did you have something like narrower in mind?
Yeah, so when I say I want to go for the PTI, that was like my, oh man, I like really want that. I didn't think it was likely at all, it was like, it'd be so nice, just like the hope, right? But my goal was really just to, like I said, try to do as well as I did at the World's Calling. I felt like, and I have felt for a while, that Dash was in a very good spot in this meta. She feels much stronger than she has in past metas, even stronger than she did back then at, like I said, at the San Jose meta. But
yep.
So my goal was to at least make day 2, and then hopefully have a better record on day 2 than I had at the World's Calling, right? So, or as good. So that would be, I think I was like 6-2 and then 3-2. So yeah, in San Jose. So yeah, I wanted to do at least that well here, and then I was just kind of like, once I made day 2, I was happy. I just get to play CC for 2 days. It feels pretty good.
Yeah, for sure. I 5-3 in the calling for me, did not make it. I got dumpstered by an Azalea just randomly in like round 4, and I knew that was like, I was 4-2 in round 6, and I had to win out the last 2, and just wasn't. Then I faced an Oldham. I was on Azuri. It just didn't work out.
Our stories were almost very similar, it sounds like, actually.
I tell you, I felt really good going in. I started 3-0, and I was like, all right, okay. Like, my goal was day 2. Like, that was it. I haven't been able to day 2 something yet. So that was that was the big one, but I couldn't quite get there.
I mean, going X2 is hard in a field like that. I mean, really it's also so random. You can't really prep for the meta because it's just random people. 900 people, there's going to be all decks represented.
Right.
So, yeah, and then just I don't know. There's some variance there. You have to win 75% of your games against who knows who you're up against. It's tough.
Yeah, especially I feel like you can't tech for everybody, right? So like if you run into like that wild card that you weren't prepared for, like it's very easy to just lose that game. You made day 2, you get to the top 8, you get to the finals. What was going through your mind when you sat down and shuffled up for the last game? Which leads me to my first community question from Taylor Crawford, or Help Me Jace on Twitter, aka your opponent in that last game. He asks, "Why you gotta do me so dirty?"
Well, okay. The answer to that is it's about damn time, Taylor. But so like I was saying earlier, the crowd I have here is quite tough. Taylor's actually relatively local to me. We meet up at a lot of RTNs and ProQuests in Roanoke. And he's beaten me several times at those events. So I finally got the win, and I'm happy it was this event. But yeah, it definitely overdue, I'd say. But yeah, no, he's a great player. Like I said, a lot of his crew is made day 2. They're all great. Mara shows up there as well, so a lot of talent in that area.
That top 8, especially for the calling, like as impressive as the Pro Tour one, that calling top 8 had some. Some of the more iconic players in the game just surrounding you. Did you feel like pressure at that point? Is that kind of a happy to be there kind of moment there, or were you like in the zone where like, all right, I'm gonna sit down? Like, who did you face for your quarterfinals match?
Matt Rogers. So yeah, So I gotta be honest, I was like, there's always some anxiety about playing a big name just because you know that they're not gonna make mistakes, right? They're like very good players. But this is also the first time that I've made it to a top 8 in an event where it's open deck lists for top 8 players.
Okay.
And I felt so strong with Dash in that kind of situation because the whole time I'm like, I built the deck to try to have a chance against basically every other deck, right? And half of the battle is guessing what plan they're going to be on. So since I have like the perfect deck to answer the question, so as soon as I know exactly what question's being asked by looking through their whole deck list, the game gets way easier. Like, yeah, so for instance, I sat down, I saw Matt Rogers' deck list. I knew he was on like somewhat of a fatigue build, not like pure fatigue Oldhim, but I saw he had some life gain in there. So I looked at his deck list and I was worried that I was going to see Imperial Warhorn in the deck list because that's kind of, the tech you bring in for Dash, but he didn't have it, which made my sideboarding a lot easier. And then I also saw that he only had one red pummel. So like, it's so much easier to play around the deck when you know there's only one pummel.
Sure.
Especially Oldhim, it's like, I don't know. Dash is already, I think, pretty good against Oldhim right now, and having all that extra information, I felt very confident, I'll say. Not an easy win by any means, because Matt Rogers is still Matt Rogers, but I was in about as good of a spot as I could be in the matchup.
Absolutely. Who did you end up facing in the semis?
That was Dave Lynn from the Wolfpack. So also on Oldhim. Kind of a similar situation. He also didn't have Warhorn, also only had one red pummel. I think a big part of what helped me win that game is, baiting out the pummel on the CNC when I had to reinforce the line in Arsenal, and he knew I had it, but he kind of has to go for it there, right?
Yeah.
So, and then once that one's out of the way, I don't have to worry about pummel anymore. He was running an Othos in the matchup, which was really surprising to me. Kind of caught me off guard, but not having Rampart is good for me. So
yeah. One of the reasons you mentioned for liking Dash so much was that it had a limited card pool that was easily fine-tuned and allowed you to pivot strategies easily, both in the sideboard and during the game. This leads me to my next community question from John Powell, who asks, what did your testing process look like? There are lots of two ofs, and that generally denotes a fine-tuned deck.
Yeah, that's John. That's one of the guys I went up with. So he's throwing me that question there when he's been my primary testing partner. But, yeah. So the two ofs are mostly because either things that are really horrible to have more than one in your hand at the same time. So dropping from 3 to 2 makes that a lot better. Combustible couriers, and it's probably the like biggest standout there. I know that most dashes are on 3. I just drawing 2 of those at the same time feels horrible. So I dropped down to 2 and it felt fine. And then the Tekla core is kind of the same way. Non-blocks are not great in a deck that is surviving by having a lot of 3 blocks a lot of the time. So having too many items in the deck, even in the aggro matchup, is potentially game losing if you draw too many at one time. So yeah, that's kind of how I got to down to 2 copies or less of all this different stuff. Yeah.
All right. Following up on that, I don't think I have ever seen a more impassioned and panicked response to seeing a Victor's deck list than when your list came out. So for all the people who have been on my back about it, what happened to the yellow 0 to 60s, Merrick? What happened to them? Why aren't they there? Where did you put them?
Yeah, they're gone. I don't know. It would take a lot for me to add them back. So there are a bunch of different builds for Dash, obviously. I think that in the aggro, like pure aggro package, if all you're trying to do is just kill your opponent with raw damage, and not really care about blocking, or you're not worried about fatigue or anything like that, then yeah, maybe 0 to 60 makes more sense potentially, because it is technically 1 more point of value in that situation. I don't have that happen ever with my build. I'd never wish that a yellow T-bone was a yellow 0 to 60. That's kind of the swap, right? Like you're always going to play the reds and blues of both of those cards. And if you play all 18, so 9 of each, you kind of end up in the situation where your high octane turns and max V turns are super easy to play, but then you have really terrible turns in the middle where it's like a bunch of 2 and 3 attacks and like that's it, right? It's like, yeah, I can do all these for free, but my whole hand does 8 damage, so not that exciting. So I think you only want 15 0 costs in the deck, and in my opinion, T-bone is more valuable than 0 to 60, even outside of the Ranger meta. In the Ranger meta, it's incredibly strong. It's so good, especially with like, so obviously the strength there, right, is all their equipment is blade breaks. You can destroy New Horizon and clear the whole arsenal and just ruin Lucky's day. It's also very good. All the T-bones are also very good with against Codex of Frailty, because they can like Codex you and then you put a T-bone back in your arsenal, and it's like if you had another one in your hand, then it doesn't matter if it has a Frailty token, you're going to give me your equipment. I could attack you with a blue T-bone with Frailty for 0, and you still have to block with New Horizon. So that's kind of like,
that's kind of vicious right there. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, it's just mean, but it's super strong, right? And then even outside of, like I said, outside of Ranger matchups, there's a lot of times that I can close a game where my opponent is at a weird life total, so maybe they're at 1, right? Or maybe it's like something else where they're trying to avoid pistol lock at the end of the game. So if they're saving equipment for a breakpoint and they only have like 1 piece of equipment left, so say Rune Blade only has Grasp or something, right? Like the second block on Grasp, and they've blocked with their other stuff, it's gone. You can play yellow T-bone first, boost, and you take the Grasp, like you force them to block with Grasp, and it also takes another card. So it's basically a breakpoint attack on its own, even though it's a 0 for 2.
Sure.
And I've closed several games that way as well. It's really a strong play. And then I'm gonna like rant about T-bone for a while, but
by all means,
the last thing I'll say on it is on turn 0, it's amazing because it's a way to you can kind of look at equipment as just extra life total that heroes have at the beginning of the game, and usually on turn 0 you're just going to block with your whole hand and move on, but T-bone says, no, I'm definitely getting some of your life total in the form of your equipment. So it's just great in like most situations, I feel like.
So I'm thankful for like Snapdragon Scalers, just the 0 armor that still able to block.
Exactly. That's why I run so many T-bones.
Right. Do you often find yourself double or triple T-boning like in a given turn?
Yeah, so T-bone is usually the way it plays out is like they're all 3 blocks, right? So worst case scenario, if you don't have a good turn for it, it's just a 3 block, which is all of Dash's cards other than the items. So it's fine in that situation. Otherwise, it's a combo turn, or maybe not combo, but like power turn enabler with max velocity or high octane.
Yep.
Or you're waiting for one or two of them, or maybe one of them and a magnetic. You can do T-bone, another boost, and magnetic is a totally fine play to get 3 equipment, and usually one of those will have blade break at that point, and then you can, if you manage to do it again, I mean, basically it's just weakening them, right? Setting up for a even more devastating T-bone turn later on.
Sure. Now you started talking about it a bit there. Is there, it's the Ranger meta, right? Azalea, Lexi are very popular. Are there some when you're going into both of them or either of them? Can you give us perhaps maybe some tips on handling either Azalea or Lexi as Dash in those matchups? I guess given your list, do you have anything that you would consider beyond the yellow T-bones, like tech? I guess for the Ranger matchup.
Yeah. So the even before Lexi was like very good, Dash used to struggle into Lexi as one of the more difficult matchups.
Sure.
And that was kind of where CNCs originally came from. Actually, it was like I said in the interview with Savage Lands, it was replaced payload, but it did that because I needed a popper, but I also needed to do something else in a matchup that was weaker, right? So basically it came in to deal with Lexi, and that was before Azalea was a concern at all.
Yep.
Things have changed, but yeah, so I'd say that, like, you can look at my deck list pretty quickly and tell that I have a lot more hate for Rangers than any other Dash has had, with Rainbow T-bone, Magnetic, Command and Conquer. You know, I've got like as much as I possibly can without destroying the deck, basically, to deal with them. And then I think that was very impactful to the results out of the Calling. I mean, I don't win several of those games without all that extra cards, extra tech for Ranger, right?
Sure.
But yeah, as far as advice on how to play them, I think Lexi is, you know, everyone's saying she's the deck to beat right now, right? She's kind of overtaken Azalea as far as the top dog. I think just blocking really efficiently is fine. I'm not really afraid to leak a little bit of damage, even if I have to block with 4 cards, if I know that it's going to buy me time to set up a better turn than them, or, you know, wait for them to have something where they're not attacking me 4 times in one turn or something, you know, something like that. So it's kind of like not all their turns are going to be Rain Razor's 3 of a kind, right? Yeah. And if you wait for the dud hands, then Dash is so consistent that you're just going to outvalue on those turns. It's kind of the plan most of the time.
Okay.
In addition to destroying their arsenal whenever you feel like it. So then Azalea is a little bit trickier, and I'm a little bit reluctant to talk about it because one of the advantages Dash has is because like people don't actually know what your plan is all the time. But I think that the old plan for Azalea used to be to kind of go pistol package. You play the D-Reacts, you play pistol, and then you just outvalue over time. I think that the new Azalea decks are too consistent at getting dominated arrows like most turns now.
Yeah.
And what I found was I was running out of D-Reacts, and they were not running out of dominated arrows. So I have pivoted more to kind of a mid-range-ish, more aggro-based approach in that matchup. And that seemed to work a lot better because eventually they do have a lot of 2 blocks in the deck, and that becomes a problem.
Sure. So the after the what happened to yellow zeros, the next most popular question was, are there any changes that you'd make to the deck going into whatever your next event would be?
Yeah, so I actually I need more testing against a few matchups. Specifically, the one that's coming to mind right now is the Hyper Fatigue Golden with Warhorn that I talked about earlier.
Yep.
That's a really hard one because in Swiss, I can't slide in. I have Remembrance in the deck specifically for that matchup.
Okay.
But in Swiss, I can't put it in because there's not really enough time for that strategy to work in Swiss, right? You're going to go to time. So I want to try out... it's kind of weird, but I want to try out Optical Monocle.
All right.
Because, yeah, it's like, it has value already, like getting through your deck faster for the better items, and it's unlike core, it doesn't go away on its own, so it eats up a Warhorn charge.
Okay.
And my hope is that so what I'm doing right now in that matchup is using core to kind of delay the Warhorn, because I'll wait 2 turns before they pop anything if that's on the board.
Okay.
And then I also have the Tekla Pounder in that matchup to eat a Warhorn as well. And if I had like one more, or even just like a 0 cost instead of a Pounder there in the form of Optical Monocle, I think it would buy me enough time that I could potentially, this is why I need testing, right? Potentially apply so much pressure that they didn't have time to like wait on the 2nd and 3rd Warhorn, and I would just basically be putting them at lethal range before the time was called. And that would help a lot with sideboarding, and it would help a lot with not letting that matchup be horrible.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I am not a Dash player, and frankly, the variant names scare me. There is Wombat, there's Tree Frog, there's Boost, there's Pistols, there's Control, there's Aggro, there's Hybrid, there's even Mech. Can we just talk a minute about the different Dash variants, the names, and can you help us identify which one you are actually running in the calling? There's a lot of confusion in this area here.
Okay, so I'm happy to talk about the different kinds of Dash. I am not going to talk about what the different animal names mean, because I hate them. I think that the animal names are extremely dumb, and they are the huge source of confusion. Like, if you go to the main Dash Discord channel, you'd be hard pressed to look 2 days without seeing someone ask what the animal names mean, because new players have no idea what we're talking about. And yeah, the whole thing is like kind of ridiculous. Yeah, so I'm not going to talk about that. They don't even make sense.
I can tell it's a trigger point. You can see it.
Yeah, it's annoying. It's enough of a trigger point that my friends are like picking on me, being like, "Oh, what are you gonna name your deck? What animal is it?" It's like they know how much I hate it.
Yeah. So that's okay. That's all right. So there does seem to be a bit of it does seem like Dash, when you hear Dash as the deck, right? It feels like that it covers almost too much, but there's some nuances to how these decks get built there. Can you help identify that for us? What is the differences here?
So that's totally fine. There's a really wide spectrum of ways to build Dash. I think like the far ends, you have the Hyper Boost variant with Talishar is probably the like most aggressive version of the deck. And that one is very susceptible to fatigue, but it has damage output that's almost unmatched by any other aggro deck, right? If you try to race that, you're probably going to lose most of the time. But as I said, it's very weak to fatigue. And then you have the other side of the coin, which is the heavy control build with all the D-reacts and just a bunch of blue 3 blocks, and then you set up the full pistol package. I think that build even runs like 3 chamber along with a 3 purifier. So you're just like, no matter what they're doing, you're trying to block out until you can set up this unbeatable engine for late game. And that one is extremely good against Oldhim. Like, it's almost unlosable against Oldhim. And other fatigue matchups as well. I'd say it's probably also very good against like Assassin. At that point, but
yes, it is.
It has,
it is. It's very good.
I haven't played that build, but I like to go control into Assassin anyway, so I imagine a deck built around that would be quite good. But yeah, the problem it has is that it's quite weak against the like standard heavy aggro deck. So it had a hard time against Fi, it had a hard time against Briar. Now it's really bad against Lexi. So they have, the two sides have their weaknesses, right? But the thing I like about Dash is that with the sideboard, you can kind of make compromises to have both of those at the same time, to a slightly weaker degree. But even more importantly, you have everything in between. So, for instance, with my deck, like my sideboard notes are for myself are pretty basic, but I kind of break down not just the cards in the deck, but the playstyle, like the default playstyle I'm going to use in a matchup before I see what how my opponent's reacting to me. It's like 6 different speeds of dash that I have with the same deck, right? So that's kind of the strength of a hybrid or more mid-range approach, is that you can adapt a lot easier. And so maybe you're not having any auto win matchups, but you're also completely capable of winning against, you don't have any impossible matchups either, right? So yeah, that's kind of it. The traditional hybrid that I've seen kind of does more of a straight pivot between aggro and control, but not many people play the mid-range approach anymore. Definitely not with Command and Conquer.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the difference. And then you did mention Mechanoid. I haven't seen many Mechanoid lists that I thought were very good. I did playtest it a good bit when it first came out, because I mean, it's a giant mech suit. It looks awesome.
It does look good.
And if you get it early, it's extremely powerful. At first I was actually worried it was going to be a bit oppressive because of how strong that suit is when you can actually get it on the board. But there are too many. Right now I feel like, or what I eventually decided was that there are too many answers to it, too many ways to like just completely shut it down. If you have like item destruction or anything, it's a really bad time, right? Like Tomotai, it's on any of your equipment before you get it out, you kind of just lost the game already.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's very good against some of the other decks, and I think it's actually in the mirror, I would actually say it's the best version of Dash, but it's just hard to do well into the rest of the field. So that is actually one of the things on my list to look at, though. I want to try to see if I can bring the Mechanoid into a more hybrid type approach.
Okay.
But yeah, I think
you'd make a lot of there's, especially, I don't know, around me, I hang around a lot of Dash players, but they all want the mech suit to work.
Yeah, so everyone wants the mech suit to work. Yeah. I think the trap I was having the first time that I fell into was like trying to make it work all the time. And I think that's why you got to lean into some form of hybrid, whether it looks similar to what we have already or it's something totally different. You need to make sure that it is that you're not using it in the matchups that it's terrible. You need to somehow run the mech suit along with a pistol package, because Oldhim can also mess it up with like expose. If it starts becoming popular and they just like expose the elements at the wrong time, the game's over.
It is incredibly annoying that Oldhim apparently can just like put a card in and like invalidates just another deck when that happens.
Yeah, exactly.
Everything else is the same, but it's a bunch of silver bullets.
That's how I feel about Warhorn. I mean, hits dash, hits ice.
Yeah, right. Like it's annoying. Even like swap the weapon, kill an archetype, put expose the elements, kill another one. So you were talking about the hyper aggro and the hyper control. Now, if I have it right, I don't know if you follow, or I'm sure you do, but the previous Dash that won the Calling in Singapore, I believe, was towards that hyper aggro.
That
version.
Was I think.
Yep. So that one I recall I had put it on. I put it on the combat chain as a gameplay, and I had Capolo. I'm sure you know Capolo Dash Gag. Was piloting it, and it was both. We were both doing it. It was crazy. I ran that Phi list with Rainbow even biggers, and we were both like, it was 2 games. One I put up there, but 2 games that we just went. It was 2 turns total, like for each of the game there.
That sounds great.
Almost immediately afterwards, it became super popular, right? You just see Dash and Talishar popping up there, and like you were talking about, it's super susceptible to fatigue to the point where, like we were talking about, like how do we, even as Phi, without doing the the janky even bigger stuff, like how does regular Phi end up beating Dash? And we found out that we couldn't race it, but we could fatigue it as Phi. And that was when we were like, okay, all right. Because you could just, even if you take out your Art of Wars, you just put in as many things that just block anything, and eventually you just get there. They might be able to high roll like a max velocity, but for the most part you still survive when they do it. It's pretty gnarly. There are definitely ways to like combat that if you notice someone's trying to fatigue you, but I think with that build you don't have a lot of
there's not much plan B, right? You're kind of
Right.
I'm
Yeah,
gonna
you're
do
all
of them.
gas.
Yeah, I want you to be dead by the time my deck is empty. Is kind of the whole plan. So.
And I suppose there's another point of reference for the Super Control. I believe it top aided US Nats.
Yeah,
I think
US
Jacob
Nats, yep.
Baugh, was it Jacob Baugh that was playing it
Yep.
there? But yeah, that was because that I recall I was, in the building, the talk was like a Dashman, the top 8. It's crazy. You should see it. There's 27 defense reactions in the deck. And no one quite believed it. And then obviously Jacob was piloting it really well and it became really popular. But to your point to that also, it's susceptible to the others. But it's a great, either one of those can be a great meta call if you know, right? If you know the environment that it'll work in.
Definitely.
Both of those can absolutely work.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, we've seen like even Iris Dromai do well at some events, right?
Right.
Just because of the sheer meta call. So I think it's totally possible. And even though I haven't really played that Control-y version or the Talishar version very much at all, like I like that they exist because it means that my opponent has even less idea what I'm gonna do when I say I'm playing Dash, right?
Yeah. And that's always dangerous, right? Especially like Lexi has that same problem. Like the more ice cards that show up, you just don't know what you're gonna get. You might get that fuseless list, but even as like I play a lot of Katsu, right? If I see the fuseless list, I feel like I might have a racing chance. But if I see, if they start doing Blizzard bolts and all this stuff, I might as well just put my cards down because I can't deal with like 9 frostbites in a turn. As it is. All right. Let's see here. We covered the mechs. So I want to give Shane Wilson credit. Merrick did cover it in his last statement, but he did ask about the mech suit variant. So I just want to shout out Shane. Thank you for giving us your question there. And I think that is actually going to, we're rounding the bases here. This is a clean, we're at 47 minutes. I like it. So this is my closing question I give to all my guests. It is open-ended. It can be whatever you want as an answer, but what is something about you that you'd want those who don't know you to know about you?
I do have a very cute golden retriever.
We're dog lovers here. That's fine.
Yeah, I guess that's probably the main thing.
Dog owners are a special breed.
Yeah, her name's Evie. So I guess like my thing would be I definitely love dogs. Totally a dog person. I used to work at a dog daycare. I love them so much. So
all right.
I have a golden retriever named Evie. She's extremely rotten and gets whatever she wants because I cave immediately. Other than that, most of my time is spent with Flesh and Blood. I kind of just focus on that for fun. I'm an engineer for my like actual career, so I do some like aerospace type design stuff. But that's not nearly as fun as Fab.
All right, this is all right. So you are. We love dog people here. I have 2 dogs, Piper and Margo. I have a pit mix and a English bulldog. He is fat.
Great.
He's fat and he's stinky, and my pit mix is also spoiled. And
I love pits. They're so sweet.
They are. So I have to ask, what is? I know what my dogs sound like in my head. What does yours sound like in your head? Does she have
she's
a voice?
extremely classy.
Yeah.
She's like very usually mad that we're not like going to bed on time or something. She like likes to so if we have guests over, she'll at a certain time she'll like try to corral them towards the door and be like, it's time for you to leave because we have to go to bed.
Excellent. My pit mix is also very, very spoiled, very entitled. She'll go over to the treat area and like start knocking it over and just demanding a treat. No, she used to earn it. Now she does not. She just expects it.
Yeah. That's perfect though. That's how it should be. They need to be spoiled,
They do. And she especially is very much she takes up my spot in the bed as well.
Yeah, you're like crammed into like a quarter of the bed. They have the other quarter.
Yes. It's a big bed. I don't know what it feels like to sleep in it. All right. That is going to do it for today. Merrick, thank you very much for coming on to the Action Point. Now, this is your opportunity. If you have anything to plug, if you have a website, a project coming up, anything that you would like to put out to the world, now is your opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have too much. I'm pretty hard to find, as I think you found out trying to track me down for this.
Yes, I did put out. I'm happy that it happened, but I did put out the feelers. I was like, I don't even know how to get in touch with them.
Yeah. I'm not super active on any sort of social media. On the Discord, I'm Frenzy. You can, like, if you search me in the dash chat, you'll find my name. If you have any questions, you can ask me there. I'm happy to answer. But yeah, in general, that's you're probably not going to see me many other places unless I hopefully do well at another event. So
what is next?
Yeah,
What's next on the docket for Flesh and Blood?
That's a good question. I don't know, because we haven't had announcements on Worlds or Nats yet.
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, we're the only country that has a DVD still for Nats.
Yeah, I'd like to go to Nationals, depending on where it is, and if I can get a Nats invite this RTN season, that would be really good. I'd prefer to save the PTI for like a Worlds or the next US-based Pro Tour, if possible. But yeah, so we'll see. The last thing I'll say is just a shout out again to all the local guys for helping me prep for the event and everything, and Chad and John John drove the whole way, which is huge. Definitely helped me stay more awake, and they made sure that I was not gonna starve to death when I was in way more games than I thought I was gonna be over the weekend. So yeah, no, definitely lucky to have the community I do have, and also Taylor and his group. I'll see you guys at RTN season.
Excellent. Congratulations again on the big win. I'm sure this is the start of a fun run to seeing you at the top tables at Tier 4 events moving forward. So we look forward to following along your journey here. All right, you are watching / listening to The Action Point. The Action Point theme was written, produced, and performed by Griff. Podcast audio stream is available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and soon to be more. You can find me on YouTube and Twitter using the handle Off the Rails TCG. Be sure to head over there to the YouTube and subscribe, and click the bell notification to see more content coming out all the time. Be sure to follow me on Twitter as well. Off the Rails TCG also has a Discord. Click the invite link in the link below and be some of the first people to see the newest content from the channel and talk to my friends and I about all things Flesh and Blood. And that is going to do it for us tonight. Thanks again, Merrick, for coming on, and we'll see you guys next.
Thanks for having me.
It's the Action Point, no relaxing. Straight from Off the Rails with your host, Mr. Patrick. Show we attack, then defend and react. Calculate the damage, then resolve in a snap. Facts with this here and Ember Blade, leave no witnesses. I just close the combat chain and we winning this. Listen, this a blaze, we ain't going scar for scar. And I'm feeling like a hero, we ain't going card for card. It's the Action Point, no relax.